Hello, my name is Kelly Vaughn, and tonight I'm going to be talking about my favorite knitting book, Number Knitting. This was published in 1952 by Virginia Woods Bellamy, and I learned recently that it had an initial print run of 5,000 copies, and it only got printed one time, and so then it fell into obscurity, and for decades, people weren't really talking about it, but I'm trying to bring it back because it's amazing. So if you're new here, we're going to be talking about modular knitting and mostly items from this book, but I'll be also talking about some of the other items that I've made as well, and some hiccups I've had along the way. And this week there have been numerous hiccups. Oh, goodness gracious. All right. So I was on a trip last week, and we were in Oregon, and I took 3 pairs of knitting needles with me. And hey, Anita, welcome. And of course, I lost one of them on the plane to Oregon. And so then I had 2 pairs of knitting needles with me for an entire week, which is kind of traumatic. Hey, Helen. The project I decided that I was going to make on that trip required I think 6 sets of needles, and I didn't have any of them, and it seemed a little silly for me to go buy 6 pairs of needles for a week when I have all the needles I need at home. So I had to just make do with what I had, which is really good exercise. If you ever want to get yourself out of your normal, comfortable, steady way of doing things, I highly recommend you put some. First, you could go on a trip without enough knitting needles. That's a sure bet. But limit yourself, specifically, purposely limit yourself to either a specific yarn or just a couple pairs of needles or something. Because I know if I'm at home and I've got, my 100 pairs of needles and I've got all my yarn, I'll just gravitate and I'll keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. But when I'm traveling, I can't just walk into the next room and grab my favorite yarn and needles because it's not there. And the local yarn shop is 20 miles away. And that's the Michaels. That's the Michaels in the Hobby Lobby. I think the closest yarn shop to where I'm at now is probably 40 miles away. Hey, Bob, welcome. So anyway, I was in Oregon, and then I had a very quick turnaround, and I'm actually in Miami right now. I have a work thing to go to. And so I'm here in Miami, and based on my Yelp search for yarn shops in Miami, there's none. They must not have a very strong knitting culture here. So I made sure I had all the yarn and needles that I was going to bring with me on this trip, and I matched them up according to the pattern that I wanted to work on. I'm set for the week. And then I went and I cast on a project, and I looked at my needles. I grabbed the wrong sizes. I don't even know what I'm going to do this week. I have no idea because I didn't have the right size needles. So the yarn that I bought, it might end up being something else. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll show you that in a little bit. So first, I wanted to talk about, I know we've had a little bit of activity in the Ravelry group for the Tropical Leaf Car Throw, which is awesome. So if you're not familiar with that, this is what we're working on. And you start by knitting the double wing in green, and then the double wing in a lighter green, and then these little triangles, and then these little triangles, and just kind of fill in the triangles afterward, and then follow it up with another double wing and a divided square at the top. So of course, I had to do my own thing and not carefully follow Virginia's instructions. Instead of doing this and then this. I decided to knit these side triangles at the same time, and that was a stupid idea, and I should have just followed Virginia's instructions, but lesson learned. So as far as my progress, I didn't bring it with me on this trip because it's getting to be kind of big, and well, you know, I'm traveling, but I've been marking my status. I'm about up to here. So I just started the gray section. And then when I get home, I'll finish the gray and then do the borders. I have been thinking that because I know some people got a little bit of a later start. We had originally talked about doing like making the knit along with the prizes and everything through the end of February, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe folks need some more time. So, you know, because people had to order yarn and not everybody's a super speedy knitter, which is fine. So I'm thinking maybe end of March. So what do you guys think about the end of March? It's kind of where I'm leaning right now. Okay, so that tropical leaf car throw, as I was knitting this, I was thinking like, you know, that would be really interesting to like put 4 of these together and, you know, kind of working out from the center. Like that would be a really interesting thing to try. And then as I was flipping through the book, I noticed Virginia already did that. She actually mentions that in two places. And the first one is on it's on page 140, and it's in the section entitled Designs on Double Wings. And I think it's useful to kind of go over the table of contents. So she's got there's 7 major, I think 6 or 7 major sections for number knitting, and the first one is called number knitting and flat designs. And then she has a whole section called designs on squares, and then she's got another one called designs on rectangles and designs on single wings and designs on double wings. And so she has a whole section for each one of the 7 shapes. She's got designs based on that shape. And that's all before you get into like the baby clothes and, you know, the women's sweaters and all that. And so she talks about on page 140, designs on double wings. Here it is. Designs on double wings. And sure enough, there she has the basic shape of the double wings from the tropical leaf car throw. She shows you how to do it on single wings first, and then how to do double wings. But this is the basic shape. And down here, she shows you how it's alternating, like if you have the 2 colors across from each other in different orientations. And then on page 256, that is in the section called To the Adventurous, to the Adventurous Knitter. And this doesn't really do it justice. It's hard to see in this. I mean, you could kind of see in this one that like this is darker, but on this one here on the side, it's a little bit tricky to see that these are alternating colors. And so what I did is I colorized some examples from the book. And this is in 3 colors, not 2. But you can see that even though they use the same colors, they feel a lot differently as far as the movement of the pattern. It's got a totally different feel, even though the knitting is exactly the same. And I decided, because I was stuck for a week with the wrong size needles, I decided to just knit them up. Oh, Helen says, on a side note, I was at my local library yesterday and I happened to ask about a number knitting book. There are 38 copies in the US libraries. Yes, there are. There are. My goal is to go to each one of those libraries and take a picture of myself with the book. Hopefully. I've gotten one down so far. But yes, that's usually the way you have to do it, is through an interlibrary loan. Yeah. I saw a copy on eBay, a hard copy last week, and it was like $250 or $300 or something. It was not inexpensive. Yeah. But occasionally they do come up for sale. Abe Books is also a good place to check. I was on an auctioneer website last week, and someone got a copy for $90 through an auctioneer website, that's amazing. They got a steal. Okay, so here is the same design, the tropical leaf car throw designs on double wings. And I decided to knit up the examples from the book that are on page 256 and 257, because it's easier to see them when they're actually knitted as opposed to just when they're, on the graph paper. So these are the two different options that she listed as an exercise in the book, because a lot of that section, to the adventurous knitter, it's exercises. And I guess she was actually expecting people to because this was before photocopies, expecting people to draw in their books. That would make me a little bit nervous. Maybe it wouldn't if I had a brand new knitting book, but now that I have this book, I would never draw in it. Yeah, so that's double wings. This has been an adventure. Doing these little ones, it made me understand why she instructs you to bind off after, right here, and then pick up again for number 4. It makes a lot more sense now. It didn't when I started, but it does make a lot more sense now. All right, so since I was in the mood of, on my trip last week, knitting little divided double wings, once I got to 3 of these, I thought, if it would be neat if I could just, instead of knitting a 4th one and having it lay out flat, what if I just did 3? It kind of was cup shaped. And so I did a little experimentation with that. I, instead of using garter stitch, I did, for the most part, 5 rows of reverse stockinette and then 5 rows of stockinette. And what that does is, it's very stretchy. And so I knit a double wing back and forth until I got as long as I wanted. And then I changed it to a divided triangle. And so instead of just increasing on one side and increasing on the sides, hey Karen, and decreasing in the center, you decrease in the center and decrease in the sides, and that makes it into a triangle. And so I did 3 of those around, and it was very small, smaller than I thought it would be. But I don't know if you remember from the pamphlet I showed, I think it was last week or the week before, probably 2 weeks ago. It was called Knitograph, and it was this big fold out pamphlet of children's hats from the 50s. And the boys' hats, they had this little, I don't know exactly what it's called, but the neck came down a little further and it covered the ears a little bit better. Because a lot of beanies, they're even all the way around. But the human head, it needs to I feel like the hats need more length in the back in order for them to fit right. And so that's what I did on this. I just did a 2x2 ribbing, but I did a bunch of short rows to kind of like add some length here to the back. Thank you, Anita. I like it too. And it's kid sized at first glance. It's like this could totally go on a 2-year-old. And my husband laughed and he's like, oh, that's cute. That's so small. And then I put it on. Look at how much this thing stretches. It totally fits me. It totally fits. So this is the kind of, because of the structure of the fabric, it's very expandable and it could work for a lot of different head sizes. Like I would even be comfortable doing this in maybe like a worsted weight yarn and calling it a one size fits all. I don't know if it would fit my husband, but like it would probably fit most people. I measured my head recently and I've got a 21.75 inch circumference, which I think is pretty normal. I think, guys, they might go up to like 24. But yeah, this could be like a one size fits all hat. It could, totally grow with a person. Excuse me. And so I was still on my trip last week and I started with 3 and then I got down to 2 pairs of needles because I lost one on the airplane. And so I had 2 pairs of needles. One was a 16 inch and one was like, it had to at least be a 24 or 32 inch. And I hated working with it. Some knitting needles, they're like what's the loop part in the center? The cable is like very forgiving. And this one was not. It was like rigid and stiff. And it was a tangly mess and I hated working with it. So all week long I worked on it. Apparently I measured it today. It was a size 3. But I had some pink yarn from working on these guys. And I decided to try making a hat again. Now on page 202 in the book. So turn your textbooks to page 202. There is bag and hat of straw yarn. Now, you might think those are two separate items, but they're the same. It should say bag or hat of straw yarn, and this is the hat chart, and it's quite interesting. It's ingenious. So you knit basically a rectangle, and then you pick up your stitches along the side, and then also pick up stitches along the long side, and you knit another rectangle, and you just keep doing that all the way around. And what it does is it makes this like kind of a cup shaped at the top, which is cool. I had made it a few years ago. All right, so notice this hat is on an adult woman. I was like, I'm gonna knit that. And so I knit it a few years ago, and it says it's 6 stitches to the inch. Hey, Stephanie. And this one was actually, I think it's like 4 or 5 stitches to the inch, but it was the closest thing I had to straw yarn because I figured straw yarn is not very stretchy. And so I knit this hat. And then when I tried to put it on, I was like, what gives? Like, it was too small even for my dog. Like this is not, there's something wrong here. And so, I gave myself a break for like 4 years since I made that hat. And then I decided on my flight home, like, I'm going to try that hat again. Like maybe the yarn just wasn't stretchy enough. And so I cast on, I followed the instructions, and then this is my hat. And it's even smaller than the first one. It's ridiculous. I showed it to Steve. He's like, oh, that's like an infant hat. Like not even a toddler. This is for an infant. So I'm thinking there's a mistake in the book because it says you need size 5 needles. Okay. And I know I use size 3, but it also says you need a gauge of 6 stitches to the inch. Got it. Mine is 6 stitches to the inch. And you need to, each one of those rectangles is 4 ridges by 48 stitches. And so this crossover here, like for this like vertical edge of like unit 3, for example, should be, if it's 6 stitches to the inch, it's 12 ridges high. That should be 2 inches. And so from here to here would be 4 inches, which is exactly what this is. This is 4 inches across. So I'm thinking I need to do a little math, but I'm thinking the box number is wrong. Like if it was instead of 4 inches across, because obviously this is a problem, but like if it was maybe 8 inches across, then I think it would fit. So I need to try that, because it says that each box is 4, one box is 4 stitches. It does stretch a little bit, like not enough. Here we go. This is about the size head that it fits. There we go. That's how much it would fit. So it could fit maybe like a 15-inch circumference head. I'm thinking definitely not a 22-inch circumference head. There's no way. So I'm thinking there's a mistake here. So I'm going to try making it again with a box number of 8 instead of a box number of 4. And if you look, so this hat and this bag, they're the same thing. And I was looking at the size of her hand in relationship to her bag, and her bag looks like it's about 25% larger than her hand would be. So the way you make it into a bag is you fold it up like that, and then just like add some rings. But even if I do that, my hand is bigger than this. Hey, Rose, welcome. So I'm thinking like the original in the picture, the bag would need to be like about that. So it needs to be at least 30%, if not 50%, 200%. I don't know. It needs to be twice as big as it is, because this doesn't fit anybody. So now I just need to find somebody either with an infant that I can give this to, or just like somebody that I could borrow their kid for a while to take pictures of this, because it's super cute. I think originally it was all in one color, but I wanted to see what it would look like striped. And so each one of the rectangles, I did 4 ridges of light, 4 ridges of dark, 4 ridges of light, and then, just work the way around. So 4, 4, and 4, which has a nice effect. It's a cute little hat. I like the way the stripes go diagonally. That's really interesting, but too small. So I need to fix that. The box number is not 4. Although if I wanted to make a multi-size pattern, so like, if you do a box number of 4, that would give you like the baby size, and maybe a box number of 5 would give you like a 1-year size, and a box number of 6 would give you like a toddler, and just like keep moving the box number up. Like that could work. Yeah. Maybe I'll do that. Anyway, so that hat, it wasn't a total fail. It was a confirmation. So not exactly what I expected. That's all right. So I also did some research this week on, so I've been trying to find more stuff about Virginia and some of her old patterns. I put in a call to, I think it's a Chicago, Illinois library, and I have a request in for a photocopy of a number knitting pattern pamphlet that she did. It's the only one in any library in the country, and they made me jump through some hoops to get a copy, because I can't just fly to Illinois for a copy of a pamphlet. So I have an interlibrary loan request on that. The pamphlet is kept in the rare books and manuscripts section of the library, which is like apparently totally different than the rest of the library. So I had to do some tricks to get that. So that's should be coming to me soon. But I also I reached out to a couple of historical societies. Throughout the book, Virginia mentions different towns where she lived and where her friends were and like where she taught knitting classes. And one of them was called Eliot, Maine, Eliot. And I reached out to them and I asked them like if they had any information. And they did, and they sent me some correspondence that they had back and forth with her requesting, like I think it was part of the Maine authors group, like the people in Maine that have written books. They have like this special. They want to promote them, and so back in the 50s, they were writing her letters saying, "Hey, we would really like to have a copy of your book. Would you sign our book?" And so they had some correspondence back and forth. And also they had a letter from the Bond Wheelwright Company, which is the company that published her poetry book after she passed. And it was just like really endearing. They said that, she's the most lovable person that they've ever met, and how much they cared for her. And then I also contacted the Castine Historical Society. And those people are amazing. And so like it's not a public library, and it's like a nonprofit, and it's just this little historical society up in Maine. And Virginia lived in Castine, and I was referred to the historical society, I think by the Eliot Historical Society. And so I emailed the folks in Castine and I told them what I was looking for. And no joke, they sent me back 7 different newspaper articles about Virginia. So apparently when she got her book published in 1952. I don't know if she did the promotion or if Crown Publishing did the promotion, but there was newspaper articles throughout the country. So I have articles from the El Paso Sun-Times, from the Freeport Journal, from the Bangor Daily News, the Jackson Sun, the Journal Herald, and the Portsmouth Herald, just talking all about number knitting and how great it was, and where they could get the book, and how it was based on a patented knitting method. One of those articles, I think it probably had some connection with like Crown Publishing had maybe gotten the newspaper to write it, because one of those articles specifically mentions Crown Publishing and that there was an initial print run of 5,000, and they were hoping to do more print runs of like 20,000. And we had talked last week about there was another historical textile book that came out not too long ago, and it said in there that number knitting had a print run of 5,000, and I was like, how in the world would they know that? Like 70 plus years later. And I'm thinking the author of that book, probably did the same research and found that old newspaper article from Crown Publishers that talked about the initial print run. So that was pretty neat. I feel sometimes like I'm retracing not just Virginia's steps, but like the steps of anyone else who's tried to write about her. Hopefully the people at the historical societies won't get sick of us. I mean, probably not, because there's only like 5 people on the planet that have done that much research. But anyway, so I have all these newspaper articles now, which is great. The lady at the Castine Historical Society said that she actually went on newspapers.com to get these newspaper articles. And I didn't even know that existed. I mean, I'd never really thought about it. I know that, when I was a kid, we had microfiche machines at the library, and you could zoom in on the newspapers like really, really fine. But apparently newspapers.com has like somehow databased all that. And it is a paid for membership. I think it was like, I don't know, $17 or $20 a month or something. It's affiliated somehow with ancestry.com. So now I get daily emails from ancestry.com like, hey, activate your free membership, which I did. And I tried to do it again, and they said no, because you've already activated your free membership. So now they want my money. But anyway, thanks to the nice lady at the Castine Historical Society, I have exactly the articles I was looking for. There was 8 of them. So thanks to them. 6:30. Okay. So the project I've been meaning to start, that I tried to start last week when I was short on needles. I was in Oregon, and the knitting culture in Oregon is fabulous. The little town that we were staying in had two yarn shops, but for any, like a single small town to have 2 yarn shops is pretty spectacular. I keep waiting for someone to open a yarn shop in my town so I wouldn't have to drive 40 minutes, but that hasn't happened yet. So I visited both shops, of course, and I picked out some yarn for a project. And usually, I think Historical Society is thrilled that there would be interest. I would hope so. I'm hoping eventually to go to some of those historical societies and the places that she was affiliated with and do number knitting presentations. That would be awesome. This one specifically she mentions in the book, it's the Kennebunk Brick House Museum, or I forget, but it's in Maine, nearby where she was. Stephanie/David says, have you found any of her patterns that were printed separately from number knitting or examples from McCall's or other areas? I'm working on it. I do have that one request into the library in Illinois it's just like a 6-page pamphlet from McCall's Needlework, and it's number knitting. And I don't know at what, like when it was published in relationship to the book. I'm thinking it probably predates the book, because like if she's already got a 274-page book, like why would she do a 6-page pamphlet, you know? So I'm thinking it probably predates that. And the library listing on WorldClat says it has hats, booties, scarves, shawls, and things like that. But the booties really caught my eye because there's no footwear in this book. There's no footwear. Yeah, I was in Bend last week, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I hardly had to use any allergy spray. I did find, are there any pictures in the articles? There are, but they're like the ones that are like this. They're just the ones from the book. And so they're not anything different. Somehow, one of the guys that I kind of was really active in the Ravelry number knitting group a number of years ago, he sent me, when he bought his physical copy of number knitting on eBay, he included in his book was a couple of printouts of articles about Bellamy, and it was in, I think, maybe the Christian Science Monitor. I know one of them was Hand Weaver and Craftsman. I don't think there was any patterns in there. It was like articles about the process. But for like blankets and that sort of thing, if you are familiar enough with number knitting to like know which, you know, if you see a mitered square and it's got a diagonal line going through it, and you can just follow the ridges, you can just kind of read it and know how to knit it. And so there's some of that in there. And I did find Stephanie is working with me on the Hampton cardigan. The Hampton cardigan. I think I showed you that last week. It's a green sweater. It was not in number knitting. I think that was probably done afterward. And I don't know when it was done, but the pattern was sold separately. We have not been able to track that down, but I reverse engineered it, and Stephanie is testing that right now for me. I do know that, like, if you look here at this cover, this pattern is the Lambs and Butterflies. That's not in this book. The picture of it is, but this was the item on her patent application. And so if you go to Google Patents, number knitting, you will find the chart for this. This is in the book. This is in the book. This is not in the book. We could probably reverse engineer that. I've been trying to figure it out. This looks to me very similar to, I think it's on page. It looks to me similar to the charts, to the quilt. It looks like this, but the little tulip shapes are not exactly the same, but it's got the same kind of a feel to it. And so I wonder if maybe she attempted to chart that and turn it into that. I don't know. So still trying to track down some of those other patterns. The reason I contacted the historical societies was specifically for a pattern it was a leaflet she published in 1934 called Puff Bunny Wardrobe. And I think Knitting Traditions or Piecework Magazine put out an article on that a few years ago, like in 2017. And it somehow they actually got pictures of the garments, but there's no, because I think Women's Home Companion or maybe McCall's, they had the pictures in their magazine and then you could send away for instructions because it was like 32 or 34 pages. And it was sold separate. So we do have pictures, but they're old and they're black and white. So it might be a little tricky to reverse engineer those. And they're not all garter stitch. It's like garter stitch and ribbing, a combination. So I might try to do my best to reverse engineer those, but that would be a little difficult. So put it on my list of things to do. So what I was doing over when I was on my trip last week, I found this yarn. And so when I go to yarn shops, I have no idea what I'm going to get. Like some people go with a project in mind, and I don't do that whatsoever. I just go in and I'm like a blank slate to see, like, I wonder what I'm going to get today. I don't know. And then in this one yarn shop over in the clearance section, I found this. And I mean, I get why it was in the clearance section. It's 100% polyester. It's lace weight yarn. It's super thin. It's got sequins, and it's gold. No, it's not gold. It's like copper. So it's like brown and kind of like brown and black. Like you would need to use this in small doses, which is exactly what I need it for. There's this pattern in the book on page 216, and it's called Copper Cardigan. And the picture of it, all the pictures in this book are way too small. That's the picture of it. And you can kind of see, like, there's sequins. You can kind of see it. Not a lot, just a little bit. But last week I had talked about how there aren't any cardigans in number knitting. Wrong. That was so wrong. There are. And I've even knit one of them and I forgot about it. There's like 8 of them. And so I thought that I had like fully explored all that Bellamy had to offer as far as like her construction of her sweaters, like from the bottom up and over the shoulders to the back, like from sleeve to sleeve, from, front right hip all the way diagonally over to back left hip. Like I thought I had seen them all, and I was wrong. Not only are there like 8 or 10 different cardigans in this book, she keeps coming up with new like sweater constructions, and it's ridiculous. I think that I'm like, oh, I know so much about number knitting. No. Oh my gosh. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, and I've been working through this book for 8 years. 8 years. It's amazing. Okay, so this one is crazy. For a little point of reference, let me turn to another one. Let's see. When she discusses her needles, it's going to be an embellishment. When she discusses her needles, she usually lists them in like she'll say you need, size 5, size 6, size 7, size whatever, and she doesn't list them all here, which is unusual. So I've mentioned before that there's like a pretty great deal of inconsistency as far as like where information is located in the pattern. Like normally you'd think like in a normal edited knitting book nowadays, like you're always going to have all the needles listed in one section. You're always going to have the gauge listed, and it's consistent, and it's not in this book. And so she just mentions, what does she say? Needles. When a plus sign is added to weight, one size smaller needle is usually called for to knit gauge. However, the yarn used here was soft enough to pack to a gauge of 4 stitches to 1 inch. Check gauge with both sizes 10 and 9 to suit individual knitting. It is important to note that whatever size needle is required to knit the gauge, the smaller sizes drop or rise in the same proportion. So if you were to just read that, you think like, okay, I need a 9 and a 10, right? And you pack up and go on your trip. No. So this one uses six different needle sizes. So what she does, she also, if that wasn't inconsistent enough, normally the individual units are numbered, and that's not the case here. She numbers the rows, and so this is row 1, and this is row 2, and this right here is row 3, row 4, row 5, and so you're knitting it by row. And so just looking at this at first glance, I'd say, oh, I'm going to go from right to left, and it even has the needle sizes here listed above with arrow pointing that way, right? So now we need size 10, size 9, size 8, size 6, 5, 4. Coincidentally, on my trip, I have a 10, a 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. So like I'm stuck. I don't even know what I'm going to do this week. I'm going to go crazy. Anyway, but then if you can read this chart, you cast on here and work down and across. So you're working in this direction until you get to here. These lighter colored boxes are that you also use this as a carrying yarn. And so you knit those later. So you start here, work across, and then work down and across and down and across and down and across and down and across. And then you do the same thing on this side. You start here, back and forth and back and forth. And so what she's doing is different than I've ever seen before, in that she starts on the right shoulder and works down, and then the left shoulder and works down, and then works the back. Yeah. And I still haven't figured out what size the trim is worked on. I don't know. I keep thinking I've like uncovered all the quirkiness that there is to number knitting, and then I keep finding out that I'm wrong. She's anywhere else in the book that I've found does she number things by rows as opposed to individual units. I have not seen that anywhere else, and so that makes it interesting for sure, because like every pattern is kind of a surprise about like what I'm supposed to expect. Oh, hold on. I just dropped my headset. Hey, I don't know why I'm wearing these because I can't hear you all. Mishi B says, I'm running short of my dark yarn for the leaf throw. I'm thinking of frogging and reknitting with a size 9 or 10 so I don't have to buy more yarn. Other than a smaller size, am I overlooking any pitfalls? No, I don't think so. I mean, you'll have kinky yarn, but no, I don't think so. Just frog it. Or you could just change colors. Or what I do when I run out of yarn, which is more than I'd like to admit, because I don't plan, right? I mean, I bought 3 skeins of this for this sweater, and I hardly ever buy, like, I can't even remember the last time I bought 3 skeins of anything for a specific project. That hasn't happened in forever, maybe. Yeah, you could just change colors too, or put in some stripes. But I don't think there's any pitfalls to just doing it smaller. Or you said knitting with size 9 or 10. Yeah, you can just make it smaller, like change the box number, cast on fewer stitches. That's fine. Yeah. Oh, so this is copper cardigan. Yeah, it's breaking my heart so far. It's a nice yarn. It's Barocco alpaca something or other. I think the colorway is like called potting mix, which when I first saw that, like the little tag in the bag, I was like, potting mix. Like, did I go to the garden store? And then I realized it was actually the yarn label for this. So I think those two will work well together as trim. Yeah. So that's what I'm working on. So how are you all coming along on your tropical leaf car throw, your knit along? So throughout the book, Bellamy mentions her friends that knit these items. And whenever possible, I like to research those people to find out more about them. And this copper cardigan was knit by Constance Small of Elliott, Maine. So I did some reading on her. This was probably a couple years ago. And she actually is also an author. She wrote a book, I think it was in the 80s, and it was called The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife. And so Connie Small and her husband, I think starting in like either 1920 or 1925, he was in the lighthouse service before it was part of the Coast Guard. And for like 25 years, they actually lived in various lighthouses around Maine. And she wrote a whole book about it. She's like known as the First Lady of Lighthouses, and she was very well, like highly regarded in the Maine, maritime lighthouse community. And so her book is amazing. It doesn't mention knitting. I don't think so, but she was a very, very industrious woman, and she has a number of pieces in here. Here she is again. She did this design, and I think she also did the like a backless vest sort of thing. I think she calls it like a sleeveless waistcoat. But yeah, Connie Small is in here a number of times. Helen says, I've completed about 10 ridges on units 2, 3, and 4. Oh, okay. So you're doing the triangles at the same time? I'm going to link to Connie's book, The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife. I see. I also, Mishibi says slow, and now maybe going backwards. It happens. It happens. I get you. Sometimes that's how knitting is slow and backwards. Let's see where the Lanier circlet is. There we go. It is on page 150. So I think we've decided that we're going to extend the knit along to the end of March just to give people some more time to work on it. Yeah. Okay, so the Lanier circlet. This is in the number knitting on flat design, but it's after the 7 basic shapes. And what this is, it starts as a divided square, but then it's got some extra shaping here at the top to make it rounder. And it says in the book, it is named for Mrs. Sidney Lanier, whose enthusiasm and encouragement led to the classes in number knitting at the Lanier exhibition barn in Elliott, Maine. And so I thought, I wonder who Mrs. Sidney Lanier is. And I did some research. And so what was pretty common back in the day is that they didn't always use the woman's first name. They would just say Mrs. and then husband's first name, husband's last name. And so Sidney Lanier was I believe he was a Confederate war veteran, but he was also a poet and an artist. And after he passed away, his son and his wife, they started like this summer camp for kids and families, and they would do like crafting and basket weaving, and they do Bible dramas, and they play at the lake, and they did it for like, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. And it was called Lanier Camp in Elliott, Maine. And you could find pictures online about it, but it was, it was a thing that they did for generations of children. And so the more I learn about Virginia and the people that she associated with, like, they're really interesting. Like, I think that we would get along fabulously, hanging out at camp and going to the exhibition barns. And she had another friend that was a sheep farmer and a spinner, and another friend, Connie, that was the wife of a retired lighthouse keeper. And they sound like such interesting people that I would have loved to spend some time with them. So I feel like I can sort of spend time with them just by reading their books and their their memoirs, and understanding a bit better about the challenges that they were facing during their lifetime and with their work, and family situations, and just like what the daily life was like for them. I'm hoping, I wish somehow that I could learn more about Virginia, because we know a lot about her knitting. There's only a couple pictures of her available online, but I wish that I could learn more about her as a person. I think that would be really interesting and insightful as we delve into this book more. Stephanie says, for the Hampton cardigan, I am on unit 55. Wow. Right front, left sleeve, left front, and back done. You are a mad woman. Oh my goodness. What's it been, like a week, and you've knit almost the whole sweater? Wow. So the Hampton cardigan, I think I showed you last week. We had to redo the chart a little bit, and we had to redo it a little bit. But the Hampton cardigan, which after Stephanie finishes the example, I'll definitely show you all photos. But that one was interesting because it was knit from the sleeve to sleeve, and then the back, and then the other sleeve, and it's got button bands in the front, and it's got like a little fold down collar, and it's super elegant, and it's also got like a little peplum waist. So instead of like a standard modern day sweater that's got the ribbing in the bottom to kind of like snug it up, this has a couple of one in each of the front and the back, little divided triangles, so the whole bottom part of the sweater kind of like poofs out below the waist. It's super cute. So I'm excited to see that. That'll be a lot of fun. Maybe next week. No rush, Stephanie. I won't. But I'm pretty sure if you did the rest of it in a week, maybe we'll see it. Maybe we'll see it next week. Yeah. Anyway, it is a quick knit, especially on the size needles. Yes, it is. I think, what is it? It starts on a 9 and it goes up to like a 10. It's like 8, 9, 10, I think. But yeah, it's a quick knit for sure. I think the average gauge is like 4 stitches to the inch on that. So it's pretty zippy. I think I'm knitting this copper cardigan on size 10s, and it's about 4 stitches to the inch. So it moves along very fast. All right. Did you all have any questions about the shapes or the book or the knit along or anything else before we go? Oh, I just noticed a comment from Anita. Do a swatch with this yarn. I've heard that it scratches from the glimmer discs, which are sequins. Yes. So regarding that, Karen posted a picture on the knit along. Excellent. We will check that out. I would imagine it is pretty scratchy, but the lighter squares is where it's used. So it's just on the cuff, and it's it is around the neck, and it's on the I don't think that's a button band. It's like I think she calls it a lap over. So it's basically on the trim, and so it's not going to be everywhere, but it is going to be on the neck. So, oh well. I don't know how much I'll be wearing the sweater. It's mostly for like posterity to have knit everything from the book. But yes, I would definitely use this sparingly. You know, I feel like it can't be any worse than mohair. I mean, just right now, this doesn't bother me, but like mohair is super scratchy for me, and I can't even have it touch my skin. So I think it'll be okay in, the limited quantities that I'm using it. I definitely wouldn't use this like on its own, for sure. I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe Virginia has got a project for me that just uses sequin yarn, and I just haven't found it yet. All righty, friends. This has been super fun. Thank you again for joining me on these. And if you're watching this and you haven't already subscribed, please do. And that way you'll get notifications when I do these again. And also, I'm trying something new, because this whole effort, it does cost money. We're going to be investing a fairly significant amount in the new camera setup, which I'm super excited about. But I've been putting some links down below for like the books and the things that I mentioned. And if you want to buy any of those books, awesome. If you don't, and you just click on the links, that's awesome too. Because I'm trying to get a little bit of income going to support what we're doing. And again, no pressure. Even if you don't buy anything from the links and you just click on them, that's awesome. And I thank you for that. David/Stephanie says, someone posted that they wanted to see what 3 stitches to an inch looks like on lace weight yarn. Yes, it is glorious. I've done something like that. I think there was one in the book called Snowflake. Let me find it real quick. It's called Snowflake Cape. Oh, Karen did Snowflake Cape Scarf. Let me find it. That is on page 156. Now, I do need to caution you, if you do that, don't use superwash wool. Find a yarn that is non-superwash, and it's got a bit of a bloom to it. I don't know if you can see it on here. Yeah, you can kind of see it. You can see it's got a little bit of fuzz to it. And if you're not sure, ask your yarn shop person for a lace weight yarn that blooms, because some of them bloom better than others. Like silk is not going to bloom, but anything that's got like baby alpaca in it, that'll definitely bloom. Mohair, that'll bloom. She says, I don't get how you put such thin yarn in such big stitches, needles at 4 stitches per inch. Amen. I agree. Yeah, so Snowflake, so this is Snowflake Cape Scarf. And it calls for size 12 needles, which don't really exist today, 3 stitches to an inch, lace weight yarn. It is challenging. It is very challenging to knit that. And I might have even used, when I knit it, of course I gave it away. I don't have it. It's tough to get over is this called the shank? It's tough to get over this because when you're knitting, the yarn kind of wants to, the loops kind of like tighten up a little bit. And so then when you are working with lace weight and you're having to like shove it from this cable-y section over to this needle section, it's tricky. It is tricky. I agree. It's lovely though. It really is. But if you don't want to knit 3 stitches or 4 stitches to an inch on size 12 or 13 needles and lace weight, I get it. And that's, that's fine. I think there's even one pattern in here that she has you work like 1 stitch to the inch. It was crazy. And I saw that and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. That's nuts. Let me find it real quick. I'm so close. I forget what it was called. Otherwise I would just do like a keyword search on my, here it is. Yes, it's called Double Wing Butterfly Scarf. Lace weight yarn, 1.5 stitches to the inch on size 15s. No. I respect the fact that she did it, and it also says hold yarn very loosely. Oh, no. That's too hard. I think, Karen, that shawl that I sent you, that's what this was. I did a different gauge, but it was very loose on big needles and lace weight yarn. And that's what this was. It was just one big double wing. Yeah. So she was very adventuresome with her needle choices. Anita says, I knit that pattern, made a stitch number that gave me the fabric I wanted and the size I wanted. There you go. See, that's how you should do it. Virginia was all about not being just stuck with whatever the designer gave you, but to really empower you as a knitter to do to make the kind of garment that you wanted. Stephanie says, I use straight needles. Yes, to work at that gauge. I agree. It would be very difficult to keep even tension with circulars. I think that's a great idea. I gave away all my straight needles like 20 years ago, but I'm thinking for that purpose, for working on a super fine gauge, super loose gauge of super fine yarn, that would probably make the whole experience less frustrating. Yes, I agree. And Karen says, I was using double points for the Hampton vest squares. That's another thing that you could do is, I've mentioned before the book, Domino Knitting. I don't have it to show you, but it's from Vivian Hawksborough. And she has in the very front part of the book, a picture of the knitting needles that you're supposed to use. And they're 2 straight needles and she calls them domino needles. And I don't think there's any mention of circulars, but, I think that's interesting just because, if you're knitting in her style, which is, basically a whole bunch of mitered squares, it's, as opposed to casting on 96 plus 96, like Virginia does. So if you're doing 12 and 12 or 20 and 20, you don't need, these ridiculously long circular needles. You can just get yourself a pair of 12-inch straights and go for it. And if you can keep track of your straight needles that are not connected, then that could be a really good way to go. I always find that when I use straight needles, inevitably I will drop one of them like in between the seat and the center console in my car, or I'll lose it on an airplane, or something will happen to the second one, and then I'm trapped and I can't knit anymore because I've lost a needle. So that's the main reason I always use circulars, because I mean, if I lose one, I lose them both, and so I can't just lose half of one of these, unless, of course, I accidentally like slam one in the couch as I'm putting the recliner down. That happened recently, and so now I have a circular with like one end missing. I tried super gluing it back, and that didn't work. So I finally said goodbye to that broken needle, and I let it go, which is hard sometimes when they're my favorites. Anita says you can use 2 double pointed and add a stopper in them. Also a great idea. Oh, the stitch markers. I have got several packs of stitch markers. Where they are, I don't know. I don't know where they are. I don't know at all where they are. Let me see if I have. Right when we left the house today, I found a little piece of scrap yarn that I'd made a slip knot, and I just like snipped off the ends. Of course, now I can't find it, even though I saved it. And I use those when I don't have my regular stitch markers. I'll just like make a little loop of yarn, and I'll use that instead. And incidentally, Virginia talks about that in the book. She calls it ring stitch, and she's even got a whole cardigan called ring stitch cardigan, and I haven't figured out why. But so instead of a little plastic stitch marker, she would just use like a loop of yarn. Stephanie says, I also use my high interchangeable with the long metal extension to both needles and stoppers at the end. That's a good idea. Yeah. I should start traveling with my interchangeable set. And I do have a set, and I've hardly ever used it because I found like the whole T thing was really fiddly. I should just start traveling with it so that when I'm on a trip somewhere, I'll just have all the sizes and I won't be stuck. I think the reason because I only have one set of interchangeables, I think the reason I stopped traveling with it, or no, that I stopped using it, is because it only went down to size 5. And I tend to knit like 6s on size 6s and below. And I was like, well, it doesn't have any 4s and it doesn't have any 3s. And like, I can't use this. Dummy. Now I need a size 8 and a size 9. I don't have either one. I use my broken circulars as stitch holders. Yes. Maniacal Moz, I haven't seen you here before. Welcome. I think this is your first post. Thanks. Broken circulars. I do save broken circulars, and I don't even have any of those little stopper things. I should get them. They're what, like $4? Yeah, I should get them. Maybe the next time I go to yarn shop, not knowing what I'm going to pick up, I should get myself some actual stitch markers and some little stoppers, and then yeah. Oh, well, when I was a kid, my grandma taught me how to crochet, and I had one hook, and then somehow my little 8-year-old self had broken off the crochet hook. All these are metal now, but when I was a kid, I only had plastic. I'd broken off the crochet hook about right there, and I couldn't, like, you can't crochet with that much. And so what I did is I had a chopstick, and I rubber banded like a splint. I rubber banded a chopstick onto the crochet hook, this little stump of a crochet hook, so I could keep going. And yeah. Oh, the early days. This is actually my original crochet case that my father got me like 40 years ago. Tie a knot in the broken end. I could do that. I guess it depends on the cable. Yeah. Well, gosh, this has been super fun. Hopefully next week when we get together again, then we'll have I'll have an update on this sad story that is my travel knitting, and this copper cardigan, maybe I will have gotten a little bit further on it. I'm trying to figure out how with a, 4 of the wrong size of needles, how I can invent a size 8 and 9 needle. I don't know. I might just have to take a break or make something else out of this lovely yarn. Anyhow, well, I think the Super Bowl is starting now. I'm gonna need. Maybe I'll make a bigger hat because this is inadequate. Oh dear. Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do this week. So Super Bowl is starting. If you care, who doesn't care? This girl. Super Bowl is starting. So if you all want to go watch that, you can. I hope that you enjoy it. I don't even know who's playing, but thanks for coming and taking some time out of your pregame routine with me. And if you have any more comments or whatever, feel free to chime in later. And there's also the Ravelry group where you can post about the tropical leaf car throw knit along, but also, any other number knitting related topics. I check that pretty regularly. And so we could get you all the help and support that you need. All right. Thanks, friends. That's it for me. And I will hopefully see you all next week. Bye.